Haley and Aiden bonded at the age of 20, but not out of deep love, but out of necessity when Haley discovered she was pregnant. The early days were difficult as Aiden had to drop out of school to work, and Haley experienced weakness, morning sickness, and sleepless nights with their daughter. The couple quickly transitioned into adulthood, receiving support from their families. Aiden's grandmother provided them with an apartment where they began their life together, without worrying about rent costs. Over the years, their bond grew stronger, and they became each other's pillars of support. They recently said goodbye to their beloved daughter Cooper, who went to university in another city. Over time, Aiden noticed that Haley was struggling to cope with daily life and became increasingly despondent after their daughter's departure. Unable to bear to see her suffering, he decided to cheer her up by suggesting a trip to the recreation center. This unexpected but welcome offer was a chance for Haley to relax and find joy again. As they sat down to eat dinner at the recreation center, Aiden realized that Haley wasn't fully present, immersed in her thoughts. Instead of focusing on him, Haley was watching something intently, and the sly smile never left her face. Suddenly, he turned sharply and realized what had caught her eye, or rather, who she was looking at. It was a young local clerk, barely in his 20s, watching the customer with a beaming smile. Clearing his throat, he called his wife's name loudly to bring her attention back to him, and did not admonish her, though he was stunned by the situation. Time passed after the recent events and life returned to normal. One day, while Aiden was at work, he received a call on his phone from his old friend John. They hadn't seen each other in a long time, and John unexpectedly suggested they meet in the evening after work. He initially asked about Aiden's family, but then John's questions took an unusual turn, and his friend was puzzled. "What's the matter? You're kind of out of it," Aiden remarked. "I saw something that puzzled me, and I'd like to confirm it," John replied. He went on to recount an unpleasant incident that had occurred that day. During his lunch break, he walked into the cafe and noticed Haley sitting with a young man who looked to be in his early 20s. Haley looked nervous, looking around as if afraid of being recognized. John was seated at a distance, going unnoticed by Maria. The man, beginning to anticipate the worst possible scenario, furrowed his brow. "What were they doing?" he asked. "Not much, just ordering food and drinks." But she was laughing so hard at his jokes and seemed overly interested in him. "It was confusing," replied the friend. "Thank you for letting me know. I will handle it," said Aiden, his tone gloomy. He then tried to change the subject, wanting to salvage the meeting and spend some normal time with his comrade. Later that evening, Aiden confronted his wife about her rendezvous with someone else. "Are you talking about Ryder? He is the son of my friend Taylor, and we are raising him together," she casually laughed in response. This unexpected explanation from Taylor, whom Aiden knew well, left him feeling disappointed. He had not anticipated such a letdown, and suddenly jealousy crept in. Aiden chose not to continue the conflict. In the following weeks, his wife glowed and carried herself differently. She would often smile enigmatically and rarely left her phone unattended. The husband tried not to let his imagination run wild, but the conversation about a young man who supposedly was Taylor's son lingered in his thoughts. Lost in contemplation, he walked home one day, seeking solace to clear his troubled mind, as he hadn't been himself lately. There was a sense that things were amiss. Suddenly, someone called out to him, snapping him out of his thoughts. Upon turning towards the voice, he didn't recognize the woman initially, but then he noticed a resemblance to Taylor, a friend of his wife whose son Haley had mentioned. He didn't know this friend well, having only met her a few times, and he had barely paid attention to his wife's infrequent stories about her. Realizing he was unfamiliar with her family, he engaged in polite small talk, inquiring, "How is your son doing in school? Is Ryder working?" "Yes, he is doing very well in his studies. Almost done with college," Taylor replied with a laugh. At this point, the man started to piece together the situation, as the person his friend saw was clearly older than a student. "When was the last time you saw Haley?" He quickly changed the subject. With Haley. I think it's been since last year, the woman answered, looking surprised. Aiden tried to wrap up the conversation swiftly, his mind already preoccupied with a different matter. He realized that his wife had been deceiving him all along. Despite his doubts and attempts to suppress suspicions, this chance encounter provided clarity. Unable to bear it any longer, he understood the truth. His wife had been lying to him to conceal her affair with a younger man. Memories flooded back of her showing interest in someone at the leisure center. The signs of a midlife crisis were all too apparent. It was the same day that Aiden was rushing home. He was already late, because at the end of the workday he had decided to walk instead of taking transportation, counting on Haley to be home by then. Aiden entered the building and waited for the elevator. When the elevator doors opened on the floor he wanted, he noticed with his peripheral vision someone walking quickly down the stairs to the floor above. When he reached the apartment door, he saw his wife standing there, and her concerned expression did not go unnoticed. Without even stepping inside, Aiden asked threateningly, "Is there something you want to tell me?" His words rumbled down the hallway. "Darling, please don't yell," Haley replied softly, stepping back from the door to let him enter. "And I see you didn't bother to come out and greet me," Aiden grinned. "It's not you." All of a sudden, came a male voice from above. Aiden shifted his gaze to his unexpected interlocutor. A young man stood there, looking at him with a determined and defiant gaze. "I told you to leave," Haley muttered timidly. "Is this your lover?" The husband haughtily inquired. "Well, he can just leave. We weren't expecting you." "You're annoying. Leave her alone," the young man objected defiantly. Aiden couldn't take any more rudeness. He swiftly walked up to the insolent man and slapped him hard across the face. Taylor immediately rushed over to him to prevent further fighting. "Before you throw around words like that, find out whose apartment this is," Aiden growled. "Take this old purse, but don't you dare return it." "How are you going to explain that?" After entering his apartment, the man closed the door behind him. Shortly thereafter, Haley began banging on the door, insisting that she be let in to talk. Reluctantly, her husband returned her belongings, packed her up, and pushed her out the door. His only relief was that their daughter was in another city and did not witness the drama. He did not inform her of the divorce until after he received the certificate. When she came to visit her parents for the weekend, it came as a shock to the girl. She was so stunned by her father's words that she couldn't even bring herself to call her mother for a while. Meanwhile, rumors spread that Haley moved in with a young man and is now in charge of renting the apartment. The man had previously lived there with friends, pretending it was his own place. Despite being a struggling student with a modest part-time job, he captivated Haley's heart in a moment of passion. Eventually, reality set in and Haley realized that her lover was only with her out of convenience. He relied on the support of friends and family, and their relationship was never truly committed. Feeling unsatisfied, Haley broke up with her young lover, realizing she couldn't return to her family and faced an uncertain future. Left alone, she tried to find her own way, but could not shake the pain in her heart caused by the severing of her relationship with her daughter. The possibility of being reunited with her grandchildren seemed a distant dream, and their future interactions remained uncertain.